Fairfax County is now in session. The Honorable Penny Escarati presiding.
Okay, good morning. All right, do we have any preliminary matters before the jury comes out? Wow, okay, that's a good day. All right, if we could have the witness, Mr. Bett, come back to the stand. Is he here or is he outside? All right, just so we can be ready to go. All right, sir, if you could come back to the stand, please. Thank you. All right, and I think we're ready for the jury. That's fine, thank you. All right, you can have a seat, Mr. Bett. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All right, just a reminder, Mr. Bett, that you're still under oath, okay? All right, thank you. All right, cross-examination?
Good morning, Mr. Bett.
Good morning.
You're a full-time employee of Mr. Depp, correct?
That's correct.
You've been working with Mr. Depp for about 15 years,
Give or take, correct.
and you make a salary from Mr. Depp, right?
I do.
And in your role, one of your top priorities is to make sure Mr. Depp is safe and that if he's out, he gets home safely, correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Depp's safety is a priority over others that may be out with Mr. Depp, correct?
His safety along with the safety of the people that are around him.
But Mr. Depp's safety is the top priority, correct?
Correct.
That just goes without saying, right? In your role as his chief of security, right?
Well, as I said, it's his safety, but those that are around him as well.
Right.
But,
But
he,
it
is, he is a priority.
And your job as security is to remain discreetly in the background, right?
Correct.
You were not part of Mr. Depp's family, right?
Correct.
You're not with him 24/7, right?
Correct.
And you weren't with him 24/7 when he was in a relationship with Miss Heard, correct?
Correct.
And you obviously have no personal knowledge of what happens when you're not around, correct?
That's correct.
And you have no personal knowledge of what happens behind closed doors with Mr. Depp, correct?
Correct.
You weren't, when Mr. Depp was in a relationship with Miss Heard, you weren't traveling out of Los Angeles as part of Mr. Depp's security, correct?
I did on one occasion.
Now, what occasion was that?
We did a trip to Austin, Texas.
But other than that, you didn't travel outside of LA as part of your security when he was with Miss Heard, correct?
Correct.
So you weren't in Australia in March of 2015, right?
Correct.
You weren't on a plane flight from Boston to Los Angeles in May of 2014, correct?
Correct.
You didn't go to the Bahamas with him, correct?
Correct.
You didn't go to Tokyo with him and Miss Heard, correct?
Correct.
You're around him almost every day when he's in Los Angeles, right?
Almost.
Picking up food for him,
Yes.
pick up medicine for him,
Yes.
help coordinate visitors to his house
Correct.
or his houses, pick up groceries for him,
Yes,
and you let him into places like his residences, right?
correct,
Because he doesn't carry keys for them, right?
correct.
You drive him places,
I do,
right? Almost every time he leaves his property, he's being driven rather than driving, correct?
almost every time.
And you help arrange that, right?
Yes,
Your responsibility, one of them, is to help get him where he needs to go, right?
yes,
You've woken him up in the mornings before?
I have.
And yesterday, I believe you testified that sometimes Mr. Depp would have just a glass of wine or two, right?
Yes,
And you testified that his demeanor when he was slightly intoxicated was the same as if he had had a glass of sparkling water. You remember giving that testimony?
I do.
Fact is, you've seen him much more impaired than that, right?
I have.
You've seen him impaired enough that you've had to help put him to bed before, right?
I don't understand by putting him to bed.
Well, there have been times when Mr. Depp was so impaired that you had to get up the stairs and open the bedroom doors for him, right?
Well, that specific bedroom door in his Los Angeles house, it has a tricky lock to it, so it's, there have been times where I've gone upstairs and maybe had a glass of water for him, and so I would have to open that door for him, correct?
Right, so you've gotten him into bed, you've gotten him some water, you've asked him if he needs anything, right?
Correct.
In times when he's been impaired, correct?
And times when he's just had breakfast and some coffee.
And you've stayed with him during times when he's been impaired. There's times when you've stayed with him until he lays down and you tell him goodnight and that you'll see him the next day, right?
I wouldn't stay with him. I just would say, goodnight, I'm going home, and I'll see you tomorrow, or if I happen to have a few days off, I'll see you in a few days.
Now, yesterday, you've actually prevented people from calling the police when Mr. Depp's behavior after drinking was bothering them, haven't you?
Prevented people?
Mm-hmm.
There was one time, correct?
Yeah, and in that occasion, Mr. Depp and some other people had a couple perfect bottles of wine and pounded an entire bottle of tequila, right?
I don't remember how much they had to drink, no. I know there was drinking going on.
Mr. Depp told you that they had a couple bottles of perfect wine and pounded an entire bottle of tequila, right?
I don't remember. That was some time ago.
Heather, can you pull up Exhibit 892, please? Mr. Bett, is this a text exchange that you had with Mr. Depp on September 1st, 2017, at 2:34 to 2:36 in the afternoon?
If you just give me a moment, let me put my glasses on.
Sure, take your
I
time.
have a hard time. Thank you. Okay, much better. Can you repeat that statement of question?
Sure. My question was just, is this a text exchange that you and Mr. Depp had on September 1st, 2017, from 2:34 to 2:36 in the afternoon?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, the date, this is well after.
What's the relevance of 2017?
The relevance is that Mr. Bett testified yesterday that he'd seen Mr. Depp have a glass or two of wine, and this is direct evidence to contradict that.
All right, I'll allow it. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Since there was no time frame on that. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, according to the timestamp and date, that is a text message from Mr. Depp and I.
And at 2:34 p.m., Mr. Depp texts you, steaks were excellent, pondering, though we'll likely have dinner here. Steaks were excellent, a couple of bottles of perfect wine. We then pounded an entire bottle of tequila, 3 exclamation points. Then the savagery commenced, 2 exclamation points. Good morning, 3 exclamation points. Did I read that right?
You did. And there's an X and fascia after that.
Okay. And then you told Mr. Depp that you said, I prevented them from calling Popo.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. It's also improper impeachment.
That's for the context of the text. And when he testified that he had prevented him from calling.
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So then, Mr. Bett, you texted Mr. Depp back 2 minutes later, and you said, I prevented them from calling Popo. Glad you had fun. You mean dinner in room or restaurant? Do you see that?
I do.
And you sent that text to Mr. Depp, correct?
I did.
And by Popo, you mean police, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You told him that you were glad he had fun, right?
Right.
Your Honor, permission, move for admission of Exhibit 892 and permission to publish.
Our objection is relevance. This is well past the relationship between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard.
Okay. If it was just used for impeachment, why would it come into evidence?
Well, it's Mr. Depp's statements about what he did when he pounded an entire bottle of tequila and the savagery that
Well,
commenced go
if you-
toward his use of alcohol. That's much greater than.
In 2017? I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're aware that Mr. Depp has used drugs, right?
I am.
And you've helped facilitate Mr. Depp's drug use on occasion, correct?
I haven't.
I'm sorry?
I haven't.
You have not?
I have not.
Heather, can you pull up Exhibit 967, please? Mr. Bett, feel free to take the time that you need to review this document, familiarize yourself with it. But my first question for you is just, is this a text exchange that you had with Mr. Depp on June 12th, 2019?
June 12th. According to these transcripts, yeah, it has my name and his name on there.
Right. And if it starts at the bottom and goes up, correct?
No, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to the timestamps.
That's okay.
My
It's
apologies.
hard to orient yourself with these sometimes.
Okay, at the bottom, yeah, I do see 6/12/19 at 1:50 p.m.
And then the more recent texts are as you go up the page, right?
Correct.
So in the bottom text, you're telling Mr. Depp that some people are at his house visiting, and you say they'll be at the pool in 10,
Objection, Your
right?
Honor. Hearsay. Also relevance. This is 2019.
What's the relevance?
He just testified that he hadn't helped facilitate Mr. Depp's drug use, so this is for impeachment, and this is, you got to read the text in context to see how it impeaches him.
All right, we could come.
Sure.
We could approach, please.
Mr. Bett, you communicate with Mr. Depp through texts, correct?
I do.
That's your primary way of communicating with him?
Well, not primary. I mean, if I happen to be in his presence, we'll communicate.
Sure, but in terms of written communications, texting is the way that you guys primarily communicate, right?
Correct.
And that's the same thing the same way that you communicate primarily with his other employees or with his family as well, right?
Yes,
You have a practice of deleting all of your texts with him at the end of the day or week, correct?
that's correct.
So there wouldn't be texts from his time when he was in a relationship with Amber Heard that you have possession of, correct?
That's correct.
You've never seen Amber do something that you would call physically violent or an assault of Mr. Depp, correct?
Other than when I testified that she threw a water bottle or a plastic cup in his direction.
But that, you wouldn't consider that physically violent or an assault of him, correct?
Well, in California, it's assault if you go to attempt to swing or throw something at somebody, even if you don't hit them.
You all right? Okay, just standing. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Mr. Bett, do you remember giving a deposition in this case?
I do.
And you were under oath for that deposition, correct?
I was.
And I asked you a number of questions, right?
You asked me several, yes.
I did. And if you can turn to page 111 of this transcript, please. It's on page 28 of the
I
document.
know. I'm sorry. Okay.
And if you look at line 22, the last line, and then heading over to page 112, you see that?
Got it.
And in your deposition, I asked you this question, and you gave this answer. Question: so is it fair to say that while you've seen Miss Heard yell and get emotional toward Johnny, you've never seen her do something that you would call physically violent or assault of Johnny? Answer: correct. Did I read that right?
You did.
I'd like to turn to May 21st, 2016. That was the incident that we talked about last night, right before we adjourned for the day, correct?
Correct.
You and Mr. Jerry Judge brought Mr. Depp over to the penthouses at the Eastern Columbia building that night, right?
We did.
And you knew that he was going there to speak with Amber, correct?
And gather some belongings.
Your understanding was that Mr. Depp was going over there because they both wanted to talk and calm everything down, right?
Objection calls for speculation as to what Ms. Heard wanted.
I'll sustain the objection if you want to rephrase.
Mr. Depp told you that he and Amber were going to talk it out and talk about what's going on, correct?
Correct.
And he had wine in the car on the way over. I believe you testified yesterday, right?
He did have a glass of wine.
And I think you testified it's possible he had been drinking during the day before you brought him over there, correct?
Correct. I saw him with a wine glass after his meeting when he came out into the hallway.
And when you, no, I'm sorry, during the day before you picked him up to go over to the Eastern Columbia building, it's possible he had been drinking, correct?
Well, we were at a meeting. He did have a glass of wine in his hand, so I presume he was drinking.
Okay. And when you arrived at the Eastern Columbia building, you can't say one way or the other whether Mr. Depp was carrying wine with him into the building, right?
I can't remember.
You and Mr. Judge led him into Penthouse 3 and were in there for just a minute or two before you exited Penthouse 3, correct?
Yes, give or take.
And then you stayed outside in the hallway of Penthouse 3 for a bit, right?
A short period of time, correct.
I think you testified yesterday like 10 minutes, is that right?
Yeah, give or take.
And then from there, you went from the hallway outside of Penthouse 3 to Penthouse 5, the storage area where you had a couch and a TV and that sort of thing that you testified about, right?
That's correct.
Is that also known as the guard shack?
A modified version of the guard shack. It's just a place for us, as I testified yesterday, to rest or have lunch or some coffee.
Sometimes called the cubby hole, is that right?
We might have called that. I can't remember what.
Okay, just to orient us, Heather, can you please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 116? And Your Honor, I believe this has already been entered into evidence.
I do believe so. Yes, it's in evidence.
Can you rotate that, please? counterclockwise. Okay, and then maybe just blow it up, please. And Your Honor, permission to publish if it's
It is
not already.
published.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So, Mr. Bett, if you, just to orient us, am I correct in saying that well, could you put your finger just on the guard shack area of penthouse 5, please?
Sure,
if you
it's
touch the
just
screen, it will-
the diagram, the schematics is kind of off
Okay.
because the way Broadway is set up, it doesn't coincide with the way the buildings were. But I can make an attempt to show you where the,
Yeah, just, I think the screen will make a mark if you show on it.
okay. I mean, I'm having a,
Well, I'm not
Okay,
seeing any
okay,
marks. Okay, good.
So this is, I'd say right in this area right here.
Okay,
Is it showing up?
Yes.
Because there would be elevators to the right.
it is.
Okay,
Yep, that's showing up.
okay,
So that's down the hall from outside of penthouse 3, right?
correct.
And you stayed in that guard shack for, I believe you said 5 to 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yes,
So if you spent about 10 minutes outside penthouse 3 and then 5 to 10 minutes inside the guard shack, you say you were at the building for what, a total of 30 minutes or so?
it could have been a little bit longer. It could have been 40. It could have been closer to an hour. It was quite some time ago.
But you're fairly confident it was 40 minutes to an hour?
Around that time frame, correct.
And you said that you arrived at the building sometime between 7:15 and 7:45. Is that what you said yesterday?
Yeah.
What's your
around-
best guess?
It would be an estimate guess, maybe more towards 8-ish, but again, it could have been 7:30. I just,
Okay, more towards 8-ish. All right. And so you stayed in the guard shack for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you left the guard shack and headed back up the hall toward the door of penthouse 3, right?
yes,
And at some point, you heard Amber shouting, and you let yourself into penthouse 3, right?
that's correct.
The closest you got to Amber when you went into penthouse 3 was 15 to 20 feet, right?
Around that, correct.
And you were in penthouse 3 for just about 30 seconds to a minute before you left again with Mr. Depp, right?
Around that time frame.
You don't remember what Miss Heard was wearing, do you?
I don't.
And you can't remember if she was crying when you saw her, right?
I didn't see her crying.
You can't remember if she was crying, right?
I just said I didn't see her crying.
She could have been crying, right?
Objection, calls for speculation, and asked and answered.
It's a different question.
Well, I'll sustain that objection. Next question.
And you can't remember if she had any makeup on or not, right?
If she did, she had very little.
You just can't remember if she did, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's possible, but it was a long time ago.
Turn to page 160, please, in your deposition.
Okay, that'd be page 40 as well,
Page
correct?
40, yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. And on line 1, I asked you the question, did Miss Heard have any, you couldn't tell if she was wearing any makeup, right? Your answer was, I can't remember if she had any makeup on or not. Did I read that right?
You did.
And you don't know you have no personal knowledge of what transpired in penthouse 3 while you were outside of it. that evening, correct?
I don't.
And you have no personal knowledge of whether Amber had a phone thrown in her face by Johnny Depp that evening, correct?
I don't.
Because you weren't there, right?
That's correct.
So you left penthouse 3, and then you went into penthouse 5 at Mr. Depp's insistence that he get into penthouse 5, right?
That's correct.
And he was agitated at this time, right?
I'm sorry, you said I went into penthouse 3 or penthouse 5 at this time?
I'm sorry. You left penthouse 3 after 30 to 60 seconds with Mr. Depp and Mr. Judge, and you went to penthouse 5, right?
Correct.
And that's because Mr. Depp was demanding to get into penthouse 5, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Depp was agitated at this time, right?
Yeah, I'd say he was agitated.
And one of the reasons that you could tell that he was agitated was because this wasn't the first time you had seen him agitated, right?
Well, no.
Mr. Depp told you to let him into penthouse 5, and you did that, right?
Yes.
And when he left penthouse 3 to go to penthouse 5, you can't remember if he had wine in his hand or not, correct?
I can't.
I'm sorry?
I can't.
Cannot?
Cannot.
And when he walked into penthouse 5, inside were Rocky Pennington, her fiance Josh Drew, and another woman and a dog, right?
That's correct.
And Mr. Depp told them to get out of his penthouse, right?
Yes.
And they exited, right?
They did.
And you can't remember one way or the other whether Mr. Depp knocked anything off the table in any of the penthouses, right?
It's possible he did, but I can't remember.
Did you or Mr. Judge, just to be clear, did you or Mr. Judge destroy any property or knock anything off tables in any of the penthouses that evening?
No.
You have no personal knowledge of whether or not Mr. Depp was violent to Miss Heard at times when you weren't around them, correct?
I have no knowledge.
And Miss Heard may have suffered injuries at the hands of Mr. Depp over the years that you didn't witness or you didn't see, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to end by just taking a look at the videos of you entering and exiting the building, I believe. Heather, could you pull up Exhibit 672? And, Your Honor, I believe that these were part of Mr. Patterson's deposition and that they've been admitted.
I do have 672 admitted, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your
yes.
Honor. Thank you.
Okay.
And the next one will be 666, just to confirm.
All right, we have that as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Heather, could you play this starting at 1? Well, actually, before we start, do you see this on your screen, Mr. Bett?
I do.
And you see the timestamp that at the bottom? That shows what time the camera, the video was taken, correct?
I see the timestamp and the date.
Okay, let's go ahead and play this, Heather. We'll start at 1:55. And that's you in that black and white shirt, right?
Oh, that's me.
That's Mr. Depp in the hat,
Correct.
and that's Mr. Judge to his left.
Correct.
And this video is when you're entering the Eastern Columbia building to take him to penthouse 3, correct?
Correct.
So it's actually a good bit earlier than you testified to, right? It's at 7:02, if I'm converting military time to...
Well, that's what the timestamp says. I mean, I don't know how it was calibrated and so forth, but according to the screen, it does say 1902 hours, which is 7:02.
7:02 p.m., right?
Correct.
On May 21st, 2016,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Heather, you can take that down, please. And please pull up Exhibit 666. And you see that the timestamp on this video is, well, let's go ahead and play the video first. And that's you on the right again, right?
It is,
And that's Mr. Judge in the middle, right?
yes,
And that's Mr. Depp on the left,
yes.
correct?
Yes.
And the timestamp on this video is 20:29 or 8:29 p.m., right?
That's correct.
So you were actually in the Eastern Columbia building for about an hour and a half that evening, right?
Well, according to these timestamps, yes, it does say that. It didn't seem like it was that long.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
redirect.
Mr. Bett, you previously testified that when you left penthouse 3 and went into penthouse 5, who was inside that penthouse when you entered with Mr. Depp?
Josh Drew, an unknown female, and a little dog.
Was Ms. Pennington inside penthouse 3 when you entered with Mr. Depp?
I'm sorry, you said penthouse 5, didn't you? Am I getting my numbers?
You're right. My apologies. Let
I'm
me start
sorry.
over. It's confusing. When you left penthouse 3 and went into penthouse 5, who was inside? Let's try this again.
Okay. Josh Drew, an unknown female, and cute little dog.
Where was Ms. Pennington? Was she inside penthouse 3 when you entered? Or penthouse 5 when you entered?
She was not in penthouse 5, no.
Where was the last place you saw Ms. Pennington on May 21st?
She was standing next to Miss Hurd in penthouse number 3.
I think there's been also a little bit of confusion about April 21st, 2016 and May 21st, 2016. So let's start with April 21st, 2016. What occurred?
Objection just to the Ms. Vasquez testifying.
I'm just trying to orient the witness,
All right,
Your
well,
Honor.
go ahead.
I'll try to
Thank you.
limit that. Where was Mr. Depp on April 21st, 2016?
On April 21st, he was at a meeting in his production office.
Okay. And I believe you testified previously that you saw him holding a glass of wine. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Did he appear intoxicated to you after that meeting?
He didn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
He did not.
He did not, okay. Now, on May 21st, 2016, was Mr. Depp drinking wine that day?
He did have wine with him, yes, correct.
And at what point did you observe Mr. Depp with wine on May 21st, 2016?
He probably had it in the car with him when we were driving down. And he could have finished it prior to us walking to penthouse 3.
And did Mr. Depp, based on your observations, Mr. Bett, appear intoxicated to you on May 21st, 2016 before he arrived to the Eastern Columbia building?
He didn't.
He did not.
He did not.
Did you ever observe anything that made you concerned for Ms. Hurd's safety?
Objection, foundation, and leading.
I'll allow it if you can answer it. That's fine.
I did not.
What, if anything, did you observe that made you concerned for Mr. Depp's safety?
From the injuries I saw on his face when, on a few occasions, I took photos of him.
Okay, nothing further. Thank
All
you,
right.
Your Honor.
Is this witness subject to recall?
No, Your Honor.
All right, not subject to recall, correct? Okay, all right, so you're free to go, or you can have a seat in the courtroom. It's up to you, all right?
Thank you so
Thank you. You have a good day, sir. All right, your next witness,
Thank you, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Keenan Wyatt.
Keenan Wyatt. Could you spell that name for me?
K-E-E-N-A-N, last name Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T.
All right, thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, Your Honor.
Mr. Wyatt. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case and penalty of law? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Wyatt.
Morning.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Keenan Wyatt,
Mr. Wyatt, where do you live?
Thousand Oaks, California.
What do you do for a living?
Excuse me. I'm a sound technician on feature films.
How long have you been a sound technician on feature films?
Over 35 years.
Would you please briefly describe for the jury what a sound technician on films does?
Well, technically just do the dialogue recording while on the set, so it's as clean as possible.
Do you know Johnny Depp?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Mr. Depp?
I've known Johnny for over 25 years, and we're good friends.
Have you ever worked with Mr. Depp?
Yes, I have.
For how many of Mr. Depp's films have you worked with him as the sound technician?
Dozens of films.
Would you please just name a few of them for the jury if you can remember?
I've done the 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Alice in Wonderland, Rum Diary, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Ninth Gate, Lone Ranger, number of films.
What part did Mr. Depp play in the 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies?
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Are you, Mr. Wyatt, are you currently employed by Mr. Depp?
No,
Have you ever been employed by Mr. Depp?
no,
Have you ever been paid by Mr. Depp?
no.
Have you ever worked for any of Mr. Depp's companies?
Yes, I worked for Infinitum Nile.
When was the last time you worked for Infinitum Nile?
Last time I was there was probably 2017. I worked on a contract basis with them, not as an employee.
And would you very briefly describe for the jury what work you did for Infinitum Nile in 2017?
I ran the media library with them, did some archiving, recording, editing, things like that.
How would you describe briefly your working relationship with Mr. Depp in the 25 years or so that you've worked together?
Johnny's great to work with on films. He always comes very prepared and knows what he wants to do and makes it for a fun day when we're shooting.
With what directors have you and Mr. Depp worked together?
Oh, many directors. But we've done several films, multiple films with multiple directors, like Tim Burton, Gore Verbinski, Rob Marshall. We've done multiple films with them.
Why did you and Mr. Depp work with those directors more than once?
Johnny makes it easy to work with.
Foundation.
Your Honor, he's laid the foundation. He's worked with Mr. Depp for 25 years on more than 10 feature films.
And relevance.
No, I'll allow it. Good.
Thank you, Your Honor. Why did you and Mr. Depp work with those directors more than once?
Well, the directors like working for him. He comes
Objection,
with.
hearsay, move to strike.
Your Honor, you just allowed the question.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Johnny makes it easy to work with. He comes prepared. He knows what he wants to do with the characters, and he collaborates very well with the directors.
Is Pirates 5 one of the feature films on which you worked together with Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Was Mr. Depp ever late to the set on Pirates 5?
Yes.
Do you know why Mr. Depp was late on those occasions?
Well, arguing going on between him and Amber.
Objection, hearsay,
I'll
foundation.
sustain the objection.
Strike that. Did you communicate with crew members on the set of Pirates 5?
Every day, yes.
Was Mr. Depp's lateness a problem for the crew?
Objection calls for hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain as to what the crew may have told him.
Well, I was just asking the threshold question of whether he had spoken with the crew.
You're right. I'll sustain the objection.
Putting aside occasional lateness on the set of Pirates 5, was production of Pirates 5 ever suspended for any period of time?
Objection calls for hearsay foundation. How would he know that?
No, if you can ask how he knew it, if you want to lay the foundation. That's right.
How did you know whether production of Pirates 5 was ever suspended?
I was on the film. I was working on the film,
Okay.
so I know it was suspended probably for 2 or 3 weeks.
And why was it suspended for 2 or 3 weeks?
Johnny had to go back to Los Angeles because his finger had been cut off. Tip of his finger had been cut off.
Do you have any understanding of how Mr. Depp's, or the top of Mr. Depp's finger was cut off?
All right.
No, I don't know.
Okay. I'll return.
And I believe you testified that production was suspended for a period of 2 or 3 weeks. Did there come a time when Mr. Depp returned from Los Angeles to Australia for completion of the shooting of Pirates 5?
Yes, he did.
Who is Sean Bailey?
He's an executive at Disney.
After Mr. Depp returned to the set of Pirates 5 in Australia, what, if any, interactions did you observe between Mr. Depp and Mr. Daly?
Sean had come to set one day and sat and talked with Johnny for a while, and they talked about collaborating and doing some stuff in the future.
Was it a friendly conversation?
Absolutely, yes.
Has Mr. Depp ever worn an earpiece in any of the many movies in which you've worked with him?
Yes.
For what purpose are earpieces generally used by actors on sets?
Well, I've worked
Objection,
with...
Your Honor. First of all, relevance, foundation,
What's the relevance?
hearsay.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Okay, sure. Mr. Wyatt, has Mr. Depp ever worn an earpiece in any of the movies in which you've worked with him?
Objection leading.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
And he already answered it anyway, but.
That's okay. I'll allow it.
Yes, he has.
When was the first time you used an earpiece with Mr. Depp?
First time we used it was on a movie he was directing called The Brave. We were doing a scene with Marlon Brando, who wears an earpiece for receiving his dialogue.
Objection.
I'll allow it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Marlon uses an earpiece for his dialogue, and it was a long shooting day, and we let Johnny, as the director, let Marlon go after we shot Marlon's section of the film, and then for Johnny's character to act against something other than just a blank nothing, we put Marlon's performance in an earpiece into Johnny so he could act up against Marlon's performance.
Did Mr. Depp ever use an earpiece for some other purpose other than listening to Mr. Brando's dialogue?
After that, we started using an earpiece all the time where Johnny would listen to music while acting. We would play all different kinds of music depending on the character he was playing. He and I would talk about it beforehand, and sometimes it'd be classical, sometimes it would be rock, sometimes it would be blues. It depended on the character.
To what extent, if any, did you and Mr. Depp use that process in other movies on which you worked together?
We used that on every movie.
Mr. Wyatt, on those occasions, in addition to feeding Mr. Depp music, did you ever read lines to him?
Yes,
Why did you read lines to Mr. Depp?
Johnny typically likes to go into makeup in the morning and write his own dialogue and rewrite his dialogue. So sometimes there's not enough time to always to remember the lines and learn them. So I would remind him in his ear sometimes while music was playing at the same time.
And Mr. Wyatt, in your long experience working with Mr. Depp on films, how would you describe his level of preparedness on the set?
He's absolutely prepared. He knows what he wants the character to be. He collaborates with the director on what his ideas are, but he always comes very prepared.
And Mr. Wyatt, during your long relationship with Mr. Depp, what, if any, opportunity have you had to observe his sense of humor?
Quite often.
How would you describe to the jury Mr. Depp's sense of humor?
He likes like a British humor. He's sometimes a little dark, maybe. He likes plays on words, that sort of thing.
Monty Python?
Monty Python. There's a show in England called The Fast Show, which he used to love watching.
Mr. Wyatt, what, if any, relationship do you have with Mr. Depp outside of your working relationship?
We're close. I used to, after a film, sometimes he'd call and I would go on vacation with he and his family.
On what occasions would you go on vacation with Mr. Depp and his family?
He would call after a film, and he would be going away with the kids and Vanessa, and he would say, "Hey, we're going to the island. Would you come with me?" and stuff. Or we're going to France. Would you come along? And sure, why not?
Would you please give the jury Vanessa's full name?
Vanessa Paradis.
And would you please tell the jury who she is?
She is the mother of Johnny's two kids, Jack and Lily Rose.
And Mr. Wyatt, on how many occasions, if you can recall, did you accompany Mr. Depp, Ms. Paradis, and Johnny's two children on vacations?
Several times.
On those several occasions where you accompanied them on vacation, did you ever observe Mr. Depp and Vanessa interact with each other?
Sure, yes.
Would you please tell the jury what you observed?
They were a loving couple, and everything was fine. Yeah, it was a family.
Did you ever hear or see Mr. Depp yell or raise his voice at Vanessa Paradis, the mother of his children?
Not that I recall.
Did you ever, on any occasion, see Mr. Depp physically abuse Vanessa?
Never.
And I believe you testified, Mr. Wyatt, that Mr. Depp's and Ms. Paradis' children, Lily Rose and Jack, were there on those vacations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to observe Mr. Depp's interactions with his children?
Sure, yes.
Would you please describe for the jury very briefly Mr. Depp's interactions with his children, Jack and Lily Rose?
He was a very loving father. He used to do stuff with the kids all the time, going swimming at the island and teaching them scuba diving and, just drawing, a lot of drawing, doing artwork.
Did he ever yell or raise his voice at his children?
Not that I recall. Nothing that stands out, no.
Mr. Wyatt, on what, if any, occasions have you seen Mr. Depp drink alcohol?
We'd drink alcohol quite often.
And on those occasions in which you had alcohol with Mr. Depp, how, if at all, did his behavior change?
I don't remember it changing at all. I don't remember him changing.
It didn't make him angry?
No. Sleepy.
Have you ever seen Mr. Depp use drugs?
I've seen him take pills. Don't know what they were. I wouldn't know what they were, but that's all.
Based on your observations, when you have seen him taking pills, how, if at all, did the taking of pills affect his behavior?
I didn't see any change in Johnny. I don't recall anything changing.
Mr. Wyatt, do you know the defendant in this case, Ms. Amber Heard?
Yes.
When did you first meet Ms. Heard?
On the set of Rum Diary.
On how many occasions, if at all, did you see Ms. Heard after that?
Several times.
Would you please describe for the jury, very briefly, your relationship with Ms. Heard after you saw her the first few times?
I mean, I don't really have a relationship with her. We didn't sit and talk. I didn't hang out with her or anything like that.
Did there come a time when you became aware that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were romantically involved?
Yes.
How often did you see Mr. Depp after he started the romantic relationship with Ms. Heard?
Oh, I don't recall. I didn't see him that often, but I don't recall how often, but I didn't see him that much.
How often were you together, strike that, how often did you interact with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard when the two of them were together?
Just only occasionally did I see him. I mean, I would leave him alone, let him have his time with Amber. I wasn't into interfering.
And on those occasions where you interacted with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard as a couple, did you ever hear Mr. Depp yell at or raise his voice to Ms. Heard?
No.
On what occasions, if any, did he ever raise his hand to or otherwise abuse Ms. Heard?
I've never seen him be violent towards anybody.
And if we could, did there come switch gears here, did there come a time in May 2014 when you traveled with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard by private plane from Boston to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Who else was on that Boston plane flight?
It was Amber and Johnny, Stephen, Savannah, and Jerry Judge and myself.
And would you please tell the jury who is Stephen?
Stephen Deuters is Johnny's assistant.
Who is Savannah?
Savannah was Amber's assistant.
And I think the jury has heard the name Jerry Judge, but if you could please explain to the jury again who Jerry Judge is.
Jerry Judge is Johnny's security.
Mr. Wyatt, why were you on that flight that night?
I don't know the exact circumstances of that flight. I didn't travel with the two of them that often. I was probably headed back to Los Angeles to see my daughter.
And before you got on the flight, how did you arrive at the airport that night?
We came in a car.
When you say you came in the car, with whom did you come in the car?
It was Jerry, Stephen, Nathan, Johnny, and myself.
And who is Nathan?
Nathan is Johnny's other assistant, Nathan Holmes.
What, if any, alcohol or drugs did you see Mr. Depp take while on the car ride to the airport?
On the car ride, I don't recall anything being taken. Johnny, I know, had called Jack during the car ride to talk to him, to tell him we were on our way, and we were listening to the World Cup that was going on at the time.
And if you could just remind the jury who Jack is?
Jack is Johnny's little boy.
When you and Mr. Depp and the security personnel arrived at the plane, who, if anyone, was there at the plane?
The plane had come from New York with Amber and Savannah already on it.
What, if anything, did you observe about Ms. Heard's behavior on that Boston flight?
Well, she was giving Johnny the cold shoulder, being quiet, and seemed pouty.
What, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Heard on the flight?
At one point, I went up to her and said something to the effect of, he cares about you, and all of a sudden she snapped and started yelling at me, "How dare you talk to me? Get away from me." So I went back to a seat and minded my own business.
When she said those things to you, would you describe the tone of her voice if you remember it?
She was abruptly loud. It was a quiet plane. All of a sudden, it got very loud.
And I believe you testified you went back to your seat or you moved. What happened next?
Johnny had said something to her like, "Don't talk to my friend that way," and I just stayed in my seat and finished the rest of the flight.
And after you went back to your seat, to what extent, if any, were you able to see Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
I was able to see them very clearly.
What, if any, violence or physical altercation did you observe between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard once you'd gone back to your seat?
I've never seen Johnny be violent towards anybody.
To what extent, if any, did you observe Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard hit, kick, or throw anything at each other on the plane?
No, I don't recall that at all.
Mr. Wyatt, was Mr. Depp consuming any alcohol on that flight?
Sure, yes.
Did he seem intoxicated?
Seem intoxicated? No, he seemed like Johnny. No, he seemed normal.
Did there come a time, Mr. Wyatt, when you learned that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were getting married to each other?
Yes.
How did you find out about that there would be a wedding?
I was at the Infinitum office, and Christi came to me and said, hey,
I'm just asking, it's not for the proof, I'm just asking him how he found out about the wedding.
All right, what's the relevance of how?
May we approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Mr. Wyatt, did you end up attending the wedding?
yes, I did.
Where was that? Where did the wedding take place?
Well, there's two weddings, one at Betty Sue's house, Johnny's mom's house, and then another one on the island. The one on the island I did not attend.
What, if anything, did you observe at the Los Angeles ceremony that you attended at Betty Sue,
Betty
Mr.
Sue's
Depp's mother's house?
It was all very quick. I mean, we all found out about it at the last moment. There was a bit of confusion. Johnny had a friend from out of town, and she wasn't sure what was going on. Little Jack didn't understand what was going on.
I'll sustain as to other people. Go ahead.
What, if anything, did you observe about Ms. Heard's demeanor at the ceremony?
She was very happy-go-lucky. She was all dressed up. All of her friends were nicely dressed up and ready for a wedding.
Have you ever, in the course of your interactions with Ms. Heard, ever seen any marks, injuries, or bruises on her?
I have not, no.
During the decades that you have known Mr. Depp, to what extent, if any, are you aware of any woman other than Ms. Heard accusing him of abuse?
No, I'll allow it.
I've never seen Johnny abuse anybody, ever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wyatt. That's all I have right now.
Why don't we go ahead and take our break? All right, let's go ahead and take our morning break for 15 minutes. Do not say anything, do not talk to me about the case, and don't look up anything. If a juror needs to address something to me, please write it down and give it to the deputy, okay? All right, thank you. You're excused. 15 minutes. And Mr. Wyatt, since you're still in the middle of your testimony, you can't discuss the case or your testimony with the attorneys or with Mr. Depp at this time, okay? All right, thank you. Let's just come back, let's make it 11:20, okay? We'll come back 11:20? All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, we're ready for the jury? Okay. Okay, yes. All right. All right, cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Wyatt, you testified that you've been a sound technician for pretty much most of your career, right?
Yes.
Okay. And let's go to that Marlon Brando. That he used an earpiece for his lines to be fed to him, correct, at that
Yes.
time? And when was that? When was The Brave filmed?
Mid-90s?
Okay. And so ever since then, Mr. Depp has thought it was a good idea and has used an earpiece, correct?
He has used an earpiece, yes.
Okay. And you're the person who controls what goes into his earpiece, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. So it could be music, it can be lines, it can be
Yes.
anything, right?
Yes,
Okay. And you have been his sound technician since the 1990s, all the way up through at least 2016, correct?
there's been a couple of us, yes.
Okay, but you actually have been on almost all his movies, haven't you?
Been on most of them, probably,
Okay,
yes.
and in fact, not only are you his personal sound technician, but you are named in his contracts as his sound technician, correct?
I don't know that.
Okay, well, let's pull up exhibit number, let's go to 633. And I'm going to show you what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 633, and it's the contract for Pirates of the Caribbean from August 2022. Do you see that?
Objection, lack of
August.
foundation.
I'm sorry?
Lack of foundation.
I didn't get his answer.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
I see it, it says August 2002.
Let's turn to page 16. Actually, the one before that. It's two before that, I think. There we go. Do you see where it says location assistant?
Yes,
Okay. And if you go down, it has your name specifically on there. Does it not say Keenan Wyatt?
yes,
Okay. And on this
Along-
particular one, it has Sam Sarker and Keenan Wyatt. Do you see that?
yes.
But eventually, it just became Keenan Wyatt in all the contracts, right?
I do not know, I don't know.
Okay. And then as part of this, in each of Mr. Depp's contracts, he had what you were going to get paid, correct?
I don't know what's in his contract.
Okay. Well, on this one, it was $14.28 per hour, correct?
Lack of foundation, Your Honor.
All right. Well, he doesn't know this contract. If you want to frame
Okay.
it, it's a different question.
Well, you, on every one of his contracts, had an hourly rate and a guarantee of at least 60 hours a week, right?
Calls for speculation, lack of foundation.
Surely he has to know how he was getting paid on
If
these.
you want to ask that question.
Do you know how you were getting paid on each of these films?
Yes,
Okay.
I get paid through a payroll company from the production companies.
Okay, and these were all negotiated by Mr. Depp, correct?
No, I'm
Or his company.
paid by the union sets the rate for me.
Right, but you're aware that Mr. Depp has negotiated it and put you into his contracts,
Lack of
correct?
foundation calls for
I
speculation.
can,
I'll allow that answer if he can answer it.
I'm sorry.
You want to ask
You're
the
aware.
question again? Okay.
You're aware that Mr. Depp has put you into each of his contracts, including how much you get paid and all of your perks, right?
I see it here, but when I'm hired by a production company, I get paid by the production company at my union rate for the job that I'm doing. That's not the rate I make when I'm working on a production.
Okay, all right, well, let's stay on this one just for a minute, and then we'll take a look at a couple more, because you ended up with a lot higher rate pretty soon. But you also had your airfare paid for, correct, for travel?
Yes,
You also were put up in the same hotel as Mr. Depp if he was in a hotel, correct?
not necessarily all the time.
Right, and if he was in a house, then you got a comparable hotel close by, right?
I got a place to stay wherever we were filming, yes.
And it was comparable.
Comparable to
It
Johnny's?
was,
No.
it was a positive, it was a nice hotel, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, productions, we usually stayed at nice hotels.
Okay, so is it your testimony that you didn't know that you were named specifically and the terms of your compensation and your benefits were in every single one of Mr. Depp's contracts?
Objection asked and answered several times, Your Honor.
It has not, and I have to,
I'll allow it this time.
I did not know it was in
Okay.
the contract.
Next question.
okay. Let's go take a look real quick. I'm gonna flip over to 855. And this is a contract, December 4, 2008, with Paramount Pictures for Rango. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And you were his sound technician there, correct?
yes,
And if we turn to page 12, which is the second one, if you look down there, your name is right there. You're designated as sound technician, correct? Do you see that?
yes,
All right, and then let's flip to the next page. And that has $3,500 per week, correct?
Lack of foundation.
Do you remember getting $3,500 a week?
I get whatever the weekly rate is for the union position that I'm doing. I don't know, at this time, I don't recall what the rate was. I don't know if that's what I got or not, but I got what the union set as my minimum rate.
Okay, and again, you didn't know that Mr. Depp negotiated this into his contract? Okay, and then if we go down a little bit further here, it has you round trip, coach class transportation. You see that?
Yes,
And then it has hotel accommodations and per diem on the same basis as the crew of the picture on this one, correct?
yes, but we were in, Rango was in Los Angeles, so none of that would have taken
Right, so,
place.
so
Yeah.
it was a lot easier. Then let's jump to Plaintiff's Exhibit 842. And this is Pirates of the Caribbean, July 2014. This would be for 5, right?
Your Honor, lack of foundation. These are contracts to which Mr. Wyatt was not a party.
Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the contract. It's,
And what is it offered for?
What's,
all right, well, let me ask it this way. For Pirates 5, you were in, what was your hotel accommodations?
I was staying in a condominium that the rest of the crew was staying in.
Okay, and how much were you getting paid on Pirates 5?
Whatever the union minimum was for my job.
Do you have any idea what it was?
No, I don't recall.
Okay.
I'd have to look it up.
And were you aware that your compensation and benefits were in Mr. Depp's Pirates contract?
No, I did not.
All right. Now, let's go to Pirates 5 in particular. I think you testified that Mr. Depp was he occasionally late a lot to the set?
I don't recall. I mean, he was late, yes.
There were days he didn't show up at all, weren't there?
Could have been, I don't recall.
And there were days that he didn't show up for 6-7 hours, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And in fact, he wasn't showing up before Amber ever got to Australia, isn't that correct?
I don't know that.
Do you recall him going on a binge with Marilyn Manson for a few days?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Do you don't
I'll allow
recall
it.
that? I'm sorry, do you recall?
No, I don't recall.
You don't recall one way or the other, or you just?
No, I didn't visit Johnny when we were in Australia, so I don't know.
Okay, so you
He
don't
had a
know-
house, I had a condominium in town.
So you don't know what was causing Johnny to be late or whether he was taking a lot of alcohol and drugs?
No.
Is that fair to say?
Yes,
Okay. And you said that you observed Johnny Depp talking with Sean Bailey after he came back. And let's go to that. You said there was a 2 to 3 week delay. In fact, it was closer to 5 to 6 weeks, wasn't it?
I don't recall what it was.
It's
I
pretty
flew-
significant when the entire crew has to stop for that period of time. isn't it?
Objection to Ms. Rederhoff's testimony?
All right, I'll sustain the objection and ask the question.
It's pretty significant, isn't it, when there's a delay?
It's significant. I don't think the film completely shut down for all of that. They continued to shoot what they could.
How many of the crew members were impacted by Johnny not being able to be there after he cut off, after the finger was cut off?
Well, there was the crew, some of the crew, I'm sure, still kept working and filming other scenes without Johnny's character in it.
Do you know how many were impacted?
No, I don't.
Do you know how much Disney was impacted?
I don't.
Okay, so now you say when he came back, he collaborated with Sean Bailey, right?
Yes.
And they were talking about how they were going to get together on something, right?
Yes.
Did Johnny do anything with Sean Bailey for the rest of 2015?
I don't know about that year, but I know that they talked about collaborating and doing something. Sean and Johnny had worked out, Johnny working at...
Mr. Wyatt, if you can just answer my question.
Your Honor, may the witness please? She asked the question.
I
He
asked,
should be
did
able.
he collaborate in 2015?
Your Honor, may he be allowed to
Yes,
please
let
finish
him
his
finish the
answer?
question, answer, sorry, go ahead.
Johnny and Sean put together Johnny dressing up as Captain Jack and addressing the crowd at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike and ask you to ask that to be stricken. That is not responsive to my question.
Your Honor, she asked him the question. She,
That's not the question she asked him. You want to ask your question again, please?
Yes. Did Mr. Bailey collaborate on any projects with Mr. Depp in 2015 after Pirates 5?
The one I just said, the project that was a promotional project for
Was it a
Pirates of
film?
the Caribbean. Was it filmed?
Yeah.
I think it was videotaped or filmed, yes.
Was it a feature film that Disney
it wasn't a
made money
feature
on?
film.
No, all right. Let's go to 2016. Did Sean Bailey collaborate on
I
any
don't
film
know.
project with Mr. Depp?
I don't know.
Let's go to 2017.
I don't
Did
know.
Mr. Bailey collaborate with Mr. Depp on any film project?
I don't know the timing of the other things. No, I don't know if he did or not.
Let's go to 2018. Did Mr. Bailey collaborate at all with Mr. Depp in 2018?
I don't know.
Were you aware that Mr. Bailey said that Mr. Depp was, quote, out, end of quote, for Pirates 6
Objection.
in October of 2018?
hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain as to hearsay.
Okay, let's pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 115.
You said plaintiffs 115?
Plaintiff's 115. Oh, defendants, I'm sorry. It's defendants.
115.
Now, this is an article in October of 2018. Do you recall seeing this article?
No.
You never saw it?
I don't read I don't read these
All right, so-
stories and stuff like that.
So would it be fair to say that you don't know whether Mr. Bailey had determined that Mr. Depp would not be in Pirates 6 as of October of 2018?
I don't know, especially based on this. I don't believe this stuff anyway.
Okay, we can take that down, thank you. All right, let's talk about your visits with Vanessa and the kids and Mr. Depp. You indicated you went on some vacations with them, correct?
Yes.
They were together for 14 years, right?
Yes.
How many vacations did you go on with them?
Several. I don't know all of them.
2, 3,
Probably more than that.
4?
Probably more than that. I don't know. Half a dozen.
Okay, we get to 6? Okay,
Yeah.
6 to 12? All
Yeah.
right. And these are all vacations, right?
After filming, yes.
Okay, so these are times where everybody's having fun, relaxing. It's not your regular,
Yes.
day-to-day grind that everybody goes through, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you have no personal knowledge of whether Mr. Depp ever physically abused Vanessa Paradis, correct?
None that I ever saw.
Right. But you have no knowledge one way, you don't know, do you?
None that I saw,
Right.
correct.
Right. You don't know what went on in their marriage and their relationship when you weren't there, correct?
Not when I was there, no.
Okay, and they split up, right?
Yes.
Do you know why they split up?
No, I do not.
All right. You don't know if Mr. Depp yelled or raised his voice at Vanessa Paradis on a daily basis when you weren't around, do you?
Not when I wasn't around, I don't know.
All right. And then you were asked at the very end by Mr. Chu whether you had ever heard of any woman accusing Mr. Depp of violence, and you said you'd never heard of anyone accusing Mr. Depp of violence. Do you recall
Correct.
that? Have you ever heard of Greg Brooks?
I don't know.
He's a
no.
manager on a set from City of Lies who has
Okay.
filed a lawsuit against Mr. Depp for punching
Your
him.
Honor, lack of foundation and
That's fair
object
game, Your
to
Honor.
Ms. Bredehoff's speechifying.
All right, I'll allow it. He's good.
I don't know what happened. I've
Have you
never
ever
seen,
heard of
I've
that?
never seen him be violent to anybody.
But you testified you'd never heard of that. So had you ever heard of Greg Brooks accusing Mr. Depp of punching him on the set of City of Lies?
Yeah, I've heard it. I don't know any basis of it, though.
So it's not true that you've never heard of anyone accusing Mr. Depp of violence, is it?
I suppose not.
Okay. And you don't know whether Mr. Depp committed any domestic abuse or violence on any of the women in his relationships, do you?
I never witnessed it.
Right. You don't have personal knowledge, though, do you?
Only what I've witnessed, and I've never witnessed it.
Right. You don't know what went on behind closed doors
I
with
do
any
not.
of them? Okay. Now let's go to the Boston plane. This was in May of 2014. So you were in the car with Mr. Depp before he got on the plane.
Yes.
How long was he in that car?
How long were we in the car?
Yes.
I don't recall. 45 minutes, an hour maybe? I don't recall.
You sat on the tarmac for quite some time before getting on the plane, didn't you?
I don't recall.
You don't recall that?
No.
Okay. And is it your testimony that Mr. Depp wasn't drinking anything while he was in the car?
Not in the car, no.
Had Mr. Depp been drinking anything before he got into the car?
I don't know. I wasn't with him before.
Is it your testimony that Mr. Depp didn't take any drugs while he was in the car?
Not that I recall.
Do you know whether he took any drugs before he got in the car?
I wasn't with him before we got in the car.
All right. And I think you testified in response to the question that you didn't think that he was intoxicated or high?
No, he seemed like Johnny.
Did he take any Red Bulls that you saw?
Took any what?
Red Bulls.
Red Bulls? I don't know. There was occasion where he would drink Red Bulls. I don't know if that was the same time or not.
All right. Was he drinking vodka with any Red Bulls?
I don't know.
Was he drinking whiskey?
I don't know.
Was he taking cocaine?
I've never seen it, no.
Did you see any powders?
No.
Okay. So you get on the airplane, and it's your testimony that Ms. Heard had a bad tone of voice with Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
She had a bad tone of voice with me.
Okay. In fact, wasn't Mr. Depp saying pretty horrible things to Ms. Heard?
I don't recall that.
Like, get fucked on set, get fucked with fucking James fucking Franco? Did you hear that?
No, I don't recall.
Did you hear him say, at least you fucking liked it?
No.
Did you hear him say, I bet you slipped a tongue in there and you liked it?
No.
Did you hear him say, make references to Amber's pussy and asking her if her pussy was wet?
Your Honor, lack of foundation,
No.
harassment.
Did you hear any of that?
No, not that I recall.
I'll overrule the objection. It's fine.
Thank
Next
you.
question.
Now, you shared an oxygen tank with Mr. Depp on that Boston plane, didn't you?
No.
You don't recall Mr. Depp insisting that the flight attendant give him an oxygen tank and the two of you used it?
No.
Okay. Do you recall Mr. Depp drinking champagne on the plane?
I don't know what he was drinking. I'm sure I was having wine. He could have been having champagne.
Do you remember him drinking a couple bottles of champagne?
I don't know how much.
Okay. And it's your testimony that Mr. Depp didn't kick Amber?
I didn't see anything like that.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Depp go to the back of the plane and pass out and moan loudly?
I don't recall that,
You don't recall that either?
no.
Okay. Can we pull up Defendant's Exhibit 245, please? And, Your Honor, I show no objection to it in the filings. So I'm going to move the admission of it, and I'm going to ask it to be published.
No. Any objection to 245?
Yes, Your Honor, it's improper impeachment. It's not to him.
All right, if you want to approach, we'll see what your objections, do you have your list of objections from your exhibits?
Mr. Wyatt, are you aware that Mr. Deuters apologized to Amber for Mr. Depp's conduct afterwards?
Lack of
After the
foundation,
Boston Pet
hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. Where did you go? Were you with Mr. Depp
Excuse
after
me,
you
Your Honor.
left the plane?
I apologize. May we take this down?
It's just on the witness, but yes. Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you leave the plane with Mr. Depp?
I mean, I got off the plane at the same time. I'm assuming I went to my own home.
Okay, and what was Mr. Depp's state?
I don't recall.
You don't recall if he was passed out or not?
No,
When you say you don't recall, as you're sitting here today under oath, you honestly can't remember if Mr. Depp was passed out when
mean,
you
there was-
left the plane?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
All right. I'll allow it this one time. Go ahead. You can answer, sir.
there was lots of plane flights. I mean, the only reason I remember this one was because Amber yelled at me on that flight.
Do you remember my question?
I don't recall.
All right.
I mean,
so-
I could have gotten off the plane and just left. I don't know.
And Mr. Depp could have kicked Amber on that plane, right?
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Not that I saw.
Okay, and he could have passed out.
Not that I recall.
Okay. How many times were you with Amber and Mr. Depp together?
Oh, I have no idea. No idea.
Well, what would the circumstances have been?
Invited over for something or other, or, Johnny and I may have been recording some music or something, and she was there. I don't know, at work. I don't.
No, you had a very close personal relationship with Christi Dembrowski, didn't you?
We're friends, yes.
Yes, and you were more than friends for quite a few years, were you
Your
not?
Honor, relevance, may we approach?
It's
All
impeachment.
right. Or let's,
It's
well,
bias. It's bias.
Approach, please.
Now, you testified that the wedding that you went to, the one in Los Angeles, seemed to be a little rushed.
Yes,
How long were they engaged?
I don't know.
Could it have been a pretty substantial period of time?
I don't know.
Okay, so when you say rushed,
We didn't know a wedding was going to happen.
well, and you said you were at the offices of Ad Infinitum, is that right? Okay, when you say we didn't know any wedding was going to happen, who's we?
Several of the people at the wedding didn't know it was going to happen.
Okay, okay. Now, did you know what Amber's film schedule was?
No,
Did you know whether she was out of town, coming back in, and leaving again?
I did not know.
Did you know what Johnny's film schedule was?
I probably knew we were off.
Because you were his sound technician, right?
Yeah, we were
Okay.
starting a film
And
or ending
when-
a film or whatever, yes.
Okay, and when did you leave for Pirates 5?
I don't recall when.
Was he filming right before Pirates 5?
I don't recall.
Okay, so as soon after they did the Los Angeles wedding, they went to the Bahamas, correct?
I don't remember the time difference.
But you didn't go to that wedding.
No,
Do you know how many people did?
no.
Do you know how much organization was involved in getting that wedding together in the Bahamas?
No, I don't know.
Do you know whether, do you know, well, okay, I guess you don't know, so I guess I shouldn't ask you then. So as a practical matter, you don't know about any of the communications between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard for when they wanted the wedding to take place, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay,
Your Honor, I just have a few.
sure. Redirect.
Mr. Wyatt, you testified earlier that you worked with Mr. Depp as his sound technician on more than 10 feature films. Is that correct?
Correct.
Have you ever worked on feature films as a sound technician or in any other capacity on films without Mr. Depp?
Yes, I have.
On those instances and those films not involving Mr. Depp, were your travel costs covered?
Yes, they are.
Were your hotel costs covered?
Yes, they are.
Was your airfare covered?
Yes.
Were those arrangements handled in any way different from the films on which you worked with Mr. Depp?
No.
What was your understanding of why Mr. Depp was late on the set to Pirates 5?
I'm just going to use your microphone.
Objection, Your Honor. He's already testified he doesn't know, and he wasn't there with him, and he doesn't know.
Directly related to the cross.
I'll allow it, go ahead.
Sorry, say it again.
What was your understanding of why Mr. Depp was late occasionally on the set of Pirates 5?
My understanding was he was having arguments with Amber.
And the wedding that you attended, or the ceremony in Los Angeles, that was right before Mr. Depp was to start filming Pirates 5, correct?
Yes.
Is that one of the reasons Amber wanted to be married right then?
Objection, foundation, hearsay.
All right, foundation, I'll sustain as the foundation.
Mr. Wyatt, you've known Mr. Depp for a long time, correct?
Yes.
And you've worked with him for a long time.
Yes.
Has any woman, other than Ms. Heard, ever accused him of raising a hand to her?
Objection, Your Honor. He's already asked that beforehand, and I went into the cross with it.
Asked and answered, sustain the
Thank you, Your Honor.
objection. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt, and thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Nothing further.
All right. Is this witness subject to recall?
Yes.
All right, sir, since you're subject to recall, you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody, and do not watch anything in the news media at this time, and you may be recalled at a later date, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. You have a good day. You're excused for today.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few housekeeping matters to take care of, and also I know the cafeteria was a little rough yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and give you an extended lunch today until 2 o'clock, so just do not discuss the case with anybody and don't do any outside research, and we'll see you back here at 2 p.m., okay? If you just go with Deputy Lusa. email that I emailed you. Tell Halus. All right. Okay, so you said you had some housekeeping matters to take?
I'm not aware of any.
We'd like to speak with you about some of the videos, if you have a moment.
I'm happy to chat with them, but I.
Okay, so you don't need me for that. Oh, okay. I thought you needed me for that.
So your order gets an extended lunch.
So I get an extended lunch. Okay, well, what I'm going to do, just to let you know, actually, if you approach the bench.
All right.